Okay, good evening, class. This will be the final lecture within the management module. I do want to thank you for making it through the module and hopefully you've learned something along the way. And again, I hope that some of you have management aspirations, and if so, I am hoping that you learn more about the things that I'll be giving you a brief and general intro of right now. So we're going to be talking about assessment with this final, assessment and value with this final management lecture here, and the demonstrating value chapter in your textbook is chapter 28, and again I will take this time to just sort of supplement what is offered in your textbook. So first thing I wanted to do was we hear these terms, we hear the term goal, we hear the term objective, and we hear the term plan, and these are three sorts of things that are relevant to assessment and evaluation, but people don't always know the distinction between the three. So I'm actually going to offer three definitions, one for each at this particular time as we get started here. First, I want to define goals. Goals are used primarily in policy making and general program planning, and they are statements about general aims or purposes that are broad and long-range intended outcomes. So that's what your goals are. They are long-range and they are broad. Your objectives, in contrast, are brief, clear statements that describe these desired outcomes. And attention can be focused on specific types of performances that can demonstrate what these outcomes are. Finally, I do want to identify what a plan is, and a plan is a blueprint specifying the resource allocations, schedules, and other actions necessary for attaining goals. So the big picture there is goals are your broad, long-range things. Objectives are the brief, clear statements that contribute to the accomplishment of goals, and then plans are the actual course of action. Now also, we see these terms assessment and evaluation sort of used interchangeably, so I want to speak on that as well. Assessment is the process or means of evaluating work. Data is often collected in a formal process of evaluation, and it may be used to develop or assess a plan. Evaluation, in contrast, is the development of a judgment about the amount, number, or value of something. Okay, so I just wanted those terms to be clear and stated clearly to you all. Now, as far as measures, we have generally, I would say we can divide measures into three different types of measures. First, I'll try to give you sort of the idea of what a measure is exactly. Measures identify what the library is currently doing and what it needs to do in order to change or in order to make improvements. Choosing the right measures will help us make meaningful comparisons to standards, goals, objectives, and so forth of similar libraries. And we often use other libraries to sort of benchmark our progress and that sort of thing. And there are three types of measures that I'm going to describe right now. You have input measures, process measures, and output measures. So let's start with input measures. Input measures are descriptive statistics about the resources that support a library, and this data is often reported to federal, state, and local agencies professional associations, researchers, and then even local practitioners and the local taxpayer base. Uh, in addition to that, funding agencies a lot of times use this information in order to determine, who should be awarded grants, who's in most need of grants, and so forth. And there are 6 categories of input measures that I'm going to share with you guys right now. The first type of input measure is the organizational characteristics. And these include the number of central libraries, the number of branch libraries, and the population of an area that is served by a library system. The second category is staffing. That includes staffing with MLS degrees, staff without MLS degrees, and other support staff such as your janitors and cleanup crew, people who are contracted to do labor for the library, so forth and so on. Operating revenue is a third type of input measure, and these can include federal, local, and state revenues. A fourth type of input measure is operating expenditures, and these can include monies that you are spending on salaries and wages, on print materials, on employee benefits, and on electronic materials. Our fifth type of input measure is the size of the collection. That includes the size of the print materials, how many print materials you have, also how many ebooks you have, and then also your current number of subscriptions to electronic serials and to print serials. And then finally, our last input measure that we're going to go over is our services, and these can include circulation of children's materials, number of library visits, the number of reference transactions, the total circulation, total program attendance, and the amount of use of public access computers. So again, these are all things that are collected as descriptive statistics, and these things can be shared with agencies so that agencies can kind of get a feel for what the library's activities are, what its needs are, and what its strengths are in its day-to-day processes. Okay, our second type of measure is our process measures, and our process measures they basically examine the efficiency of processes and procedures within the library, and these are not necessarily statistically based. These are things that can be based on observation. Examples of these can be, sort of observing how our librarians and our support staff are using their time. During their downtime, are they doing things that still contribute to the library mission and the library agenda or objectives? Okay, and these can also in your process measures, you can talk about if you can review whether or not certain processes that you have or procedures that you have within the library are effective. For instance, you can make sure that the security measures that you have going are things that prevent as much as possible the theft of materials or the amount of, the amount of conflicts that you have either between patrons and staff or between patrons amongst each other. So these are process measures that we can look at and determine whether things are running efficiently, smoothly, and safely within the library. Finally, we have output measures, and output measures describe how a library is used or utilized. And these measures can be either statistics or they can also be qualitative data. When we gain our output measures through statistics, a lot of times that comes from the library administering surveys to the patron base. And then when we gather our qualitative data, that can include, sort of looking, for instance, at what has been left in the suggestion box for the library on things of how we can improve our services, or Another output measure for, using qualitative data would be to have a focus group of stakeholders and see what their concerns are and how the library can better serve them in their opinions. So those are our three types of measures. Again, those were input measures, process measures, and output measures. All of this leads to outcomes assessments, and outcomes assessments involve gathering and evaluating qualitative and quantitative data that identify that an organization's objectives, goals, and outcomes correspond to its mission and that they are also being accomplished. And an outcome needs to be measurable, or else it needs to be observable in some form or fashion. I've also got I've got 5 categories of output measures that I should have shared before talking about the outcome assessment, so I apologize for going out of order. Our output measures include services, and those can be things such as the number of books cataloged, number of interlibrary loan requests handled, number of reference transactions that were successful, number of titles ordered, or the number of virtual reference transactions handled. Quality is something that will almost always be survey-based or collected through qualitative data, and that is basically user satisfaction, but it's hard to actually get a real measure on user satisfaction simply through survey administration. It's going to require probably some mixed methods and collecting some qualitative data as well. Collection use is a third category of output measure, and that can include average circulation of volumes, the number of loans per visit, number of items charged, the proportion of the collection that is borrowed, and the proportion of the collection that remains unused. And when you have things that remain unused, those things may be put up for consideration for weeding. Electronic resource use, that's a fourth category of output measure, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Number of times databases are accessed, the number of times that public access computers are accessed, and how many hours are spent accessing those, number of searches performed. And then finally, number 5, building activity, and that can include attendance, program instruction and program attendance, remote uses of the library, as well as your amount of service point use. And a lot of libraries keep a gate count, and the gate count helps them establish how many people have actually come in and out of the building per day. Okay. All right, we are almost finished here. I did want to talk about different categories of assessment tools. And we have, let me count here, I gotta count again. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories of assessment tools. And assessment tools are just, in layman's terms, things that can be used in order to properly assess what's going on with your library. So our first type of assessment tool is the project planning and implementation tool. So we have 5 types of tools that can be used for assessment. The first is project planning and implementation tools, and these are tools that are used for managing or for improving projects, and those can include stakeholder analysis or storyboards. And storyboards, for those of you who don't know what that term is, a storyboard is a visual display of a process, and it's often used so that people can think through the processes of what's going on in the library. A second type of assessment tool would be your process analysis tool, and a process analysis tool is a tool that is used when an organization wants to understand the work processes or some part of a work process. So if you know what a flowchart is, which a flowchart is a picture of the steps that show a process in sequential order. That's an example of a process analysis tool. The third type of tool that we have is a data collection and analysis tool, and these are used quite simply to collect and analyze data relevant to the library. Surveys are very useful for this sort of thing. So when you see that raw quantitative data regarding different functions within the library, those are, if it was collected through a basic survey, the typical SurveyMonkey type of survey, then that is a data collection and analysis tool. Cause analysis tools, these are tools that are used to assist in the discovery of a problem or a situation. So any sort of tool that helps you identify any problem that's going on within the library, that would be a cause analysis tool. And then finally, an evaluation and decision-making tool that helps you look at what your options are and then further helps you decide on a course of action. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen a decision matrix before, and a decision matrix is an example of a evaluation and decision making tool. Okay, and I'm pretty much going to keep it to that. I think that your chapter 28 in the book, that's one of the better chapters in this module, and I think it's going to help you get some of the other information that you need for understanding assessment. And we do offer an assessment course at USC SLIS. It's not taught every semester, but be on the lookout for it. And it's actually a course that I took myself, and Dr. Keeling was the instructor for that course. So if you're interested in assessment, which if you have aspirations for being a manager, you probably are, then be on the lookout for that course, and we would love to have you take it. Okay, that's it, and I look forward to working with you guys in the next module. Have a good one.